Hey everybody, welcome back to another Nature's Always Right video. Today is part 2 in my herb propagation videos. In this video, I'll show you my video updates that I took during the rooting process at 1 week, 2 weeks, and then 4 weeks when I actually potted them on. So that'll be the first part of the video. The second part is when I'm actually potting them on and giving advice on how to do all that part of it. So be sure that you've seen my other video on how to actually take the cuttings and prepare them for the propagation and rooting out in water and in soil. And this is the final video showing the final step in the process where you put them into a pot and then raise them. All right guys, we're in my laundry room. Just a little quick update here. I think it's been about a week and a half. And some of this is starting to root. Okay, there's one I can show you guys. Yeah, you see those two white hairs that's coming out of the stem there? Those are the roots. So it's just starting here. So these are the ones that I dipped in rooting hormone. Success. And it's gonna continue to root more in the next 2 weeks. I see one right here. This is with no hormone. There's a small root there. And right now I only see one with a root. Okay, here's the tea. Worm tea. I see a couple small hairs starting to develop and come off. So far the tea looks the worst. We're only in our first week and they just started to pop out roots. So, you know, we're gonna give them another week, 2 weeks, and we should have a lot of roots in there. Probably 3 weeks we'll be able to actually plant them in a pot. I'm gonna update it again another week. All right, here's a little update. Here's my no hormone, just straight water. And you can see there's a really nice root right there. Okay, the stuff with the hormone. So you can see the water is getting way too low in here, so I need to add more. So about every week you'll need to add in a little bit more water because you just want to make sure that once the roots pop out that they're staying wet. And then there's a really nice good root. So this is the one that had hormone. And then with worm tea, so far I don't really have much. So worm tea might have been a bad idea, but it was a fun experiment. So I'm going to add some more water to these so that it's all the way up to where the leaves start and the entire stem is covered by water. So now it's time to check out the herbs that I rooted out in water and kind of see the differences between the regular water, the rooting hormone, and then the one with worm tea in there. So let's check them out. First one we'll do is the tea. Now the worm tea, I did a very, very light amount in here and then just added water. The rosemary here, I can see a root starting to develop right there. Here's a rosemary with one little root. We'll continue to let these ones that didn't work very well to just sit in water. Continue. Now, this is kind of interesting. So the oregano it looks like the oregano and the rosemary didn't work, but it looks like the thyme did. Oh wow. It's kind of interesting how these put off the roots. I just put off this is one big piece of thyme, and then these are actually roots that formed off of the main stem, and then this is new growth. All this right here is new growth that it was able to do from the water itself, and it started rooting itself from that new growth, which is really interesting. So just take off each piece and then plant it, and these would all become thyme plants. So very interesting. So for the worm tea, it looks like the thyme worked but nothing else. So for now I'm just gonna, until I'm ready to plant, I'm just gonna store it in the water. Keep the roots wet. Next, let's check out, this is no hormone, just water. This did really well. Pretty much everything rooted. So here's some oregano. There's some roots starting there. There's the rosemary. You can see the roots right here. Some oregano with nothing. Some oregano looks really good. Here's some more thyme. Again, look at the thyme. It's rooting from these new growth areas. It didn't actually root from down here, which is kind of interesting, I think. And then, oh, here's the best one. Look at that. That's perfect. This is really excellent. I think we're looking more for something like this for it to be fully finished. I'm gonna plant most of these. You know, if the roots are this big or bigger, I'm gonna plant it. I'm just gonna go for it and plant all of these. Even ones with small ones like this, they'll continue to keep rooting even in the soil. So they should work out just fine. As you can see, the regular water, it appears to be better than using the tea. The tea was just an experiment. That's not something I've heard of people really doing. I just wanted to experiment and see if that had any sort of effect, negative or positively. I think that the worm tea might have had more of a negative effect, but I'd have to do more testing to really figure that out. I could totally be wrong about that. The final one is the ones that we dipped in rooting hormone and then put into the water. And as you'll see, this had the best results. Not too surprisingly. So here's some rosemary. Excellent. More rosemary. Another good one. Okay, the oregano. The oregano's interesting. It usually it's like popping out from one node. I don't see multiple areas really. Except on this one. This one is amazing. This one's got multiple strands of new roots. This one's awesome. That's gonna make it no problem. More amazing rosemary. How's the thyme do? Okay, so now we can see the thyme, and it's still not rooting out from those little sections. So if the roots are too small, like this one, I'm not gonna plant that. I could let that continue to root until it's ready. And I waited about 4 weeks for these to root out. If you wait longer, it'll be even better. The time of year that you're looking to do this, I'm in San Diego, so our winters are very warm, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s mostly. I don't know the exact temperatures, but the ideal range, I think, would be about 60 to 80 degrees. That's your temperature that would be good for rooting. And that's the temperature you're trying to maintain. Going deeper into the spring and summer, things will root out way quicker because they've got that extra heat in San Diego. Or if you have a greenhouse, you can root stuff in winter. You just got to maintain those nice temperatures for them, and the heat will cause them to root. So now we're just going to plant these. So these are all the ones that were rooted with hormone, and these ones look the best. So I'm going to start planting these first. So I just made some simple potting soil, and this potting soil is basically just some of my compost and perlite. This provides aeration and good soil drainage. And if you want to see how to make a really excellent soil mix, I made a video about how to make a really easy potting mix, which real simply, that's 1/3 compost, 1/3 peat, 1/3 perlite. That is a very standard potting mix. That's really easy to get those materials anywhere. You can also substitute peat for coconut coir, which is actually a sustainable organic matter. Or you can supplement perlite with pumice stone or sand for drainage and air. And that's another way to use a renewable resource. Okay, so all we need to do for this, guys, is just make a little hole, and I want to bury it up to the start of the leaves here. I don't really want the leaves to be buried, so I'm going to make a deep hole down into the pot. Stick it down in there, and then I want to make sure that it's supported really well so that wind or whatever doesn't knock it over. And there's my final product. And that's it. Okay, let's do another one. Rosemary. So same thing, I'm just gonna, with my finger, create a really deep hole. Put the roots down in there. Shove a little dirt around the sides. Give a little bit of compression. And that's it, all done. Okay guys, so here's the thyme that worked really well. And what I'm gonna do is just cut off each individual strand, cut it like right here. And now I've got a bunch of pieces now. So here's one piece with the roots, and I'm just gonna plant this whole thing. I'm gonna bury even this green stuff, I'm just gonna bury it. And that'll probably die, and then the roots will keep growing. And because they're so tiny, I'm gonna switch and use some smaller. So here's my nice 800 ml pots. Real small, good for stuff like this. So I'm gonna shove it in and bury all the roots. The roots need to be completely covered. Roots exposed to air and light will die very quickly. Roots inside of these plastic containers, actually, if they're so exposed to light, the roots will actually die around the outer side. So if you can shade them from the side somehow, it's a good idea. Now, thyme is typically rooted just in the soil, and we're gonna take a look at that in one moment. We're gonna check out the herbs I propagated from cutting that I put in soil. So here's the stuff that I rooted from cutting in soil. Now, unfortunately, I did not do a good job of keeping these moist. So most of these probably didn't root out because I just didn't keep them wet enough. So let's see what kind of results we got here. So yeah, it looks like the rosemary. Yeah, so unfortunately, this is the one that got really dried out. And I failed because if it doesn't stay moist, the stick will basically die and it can't produce the roots. And this is just part of farming and gardening. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 2 weeks or 60 years, you will always have crop failure or, mistakes that you make, and that's all good. I'm pretty sure some of this thyme worked. this one right here. This thyme has new growth on it, so does this one. I expect those to have roots. So let's check them out. Aha, yep. And lo and behold, they do. Here's the thyme. Hopefully you can see there's the green new growth on there. And down at the bottom, there's a couple little roots. So this one worked, so we'll plant it. So that one should have no problem taking. Nice. So look at the rosemary. I did not use rooting hormone on any of these. Okay, so this rosemary has roots. Here's another thyme with new growth on it. Yep. I think it's good. So we'll plant this one. I didn't have the right conditions because I didn't keep them wet enough. So sorry about that, guys. I'll have to do a better experiment with rooting them in soil another time. It's not a good test, but so just so you know, thyme you can root in soil. Rosemary and oregano, most people recommend to do it in water. And thyme, as I found out, thyme also roots out very well in water. So all three can be done in water. It's nice doing them in water just as you can pack, you can pack like 50 cuttings in this one little thing. This is 72 cuttings. So it's a way that you can do a lot in a small space too. So for me, I think I'll probably be rooting out in water from now on for many of my cuttings. All right, guys, and that's it. So here's my final product. I wanted to get a lot more cuttings than this, but I'm still stoked. I got some more cuttings here. I can plant these around my yard, and then I'll get bigger plants that I can take more cuttings from to propagate more. So the last step here, of course, always the last step, is to water them in, get them nice and nestled in there and ready to grow. These need to go through a hardening off process, and that just means to keep them out of direct sunlight for the first few days, or a couple hours of direct sunlight every day will be fine. And so what I'll do is leave them here on this table, and at the end of the afternoon they'll get a little bit of light. So they'll stay here for about a week, and from there they're going to produce a lot of roots in the next week. And then once they're stabilized, I'll move them over to here, which is where I keep most of my potted propagations. All right, guys, so here's the herbs 3 days after I propagated them, and they all look really good. I did get rid of 2 of them the other day because they didn't make it. It was one of the really weak times. But anyways, the rest of these are looking excellent. They're all gonna make it. They're all gonna thrive. And the reason I know that is just by looking at them. They're standing up straight. None of the leaves are wilted. Everything still looks green. This guy looks weak, so it's kind of yellowing. This one is a potential one that might not make it. The rest to me look really good. This thyme has a nice new growth on there, so that looks good. So does this thyme, and all of this still looks alive. So I'm real hopeful that I'll basically get all this to survive. So I got like a 90% success rate on the ones I put into pots. So it's pretty good. And now I'm gonna let them sit here for one more day, and then I'll move them into a location that'll get partial sun for 4 hours a day. And then eventually, a couple days later, I'll just move them out to here, which is full sun. It is March right now. I could probably put these out in full sun right now because it's only gonna get into the 70s, and they'd probably be just fine. I went to a lot of effort and a lot of time to get these to grow. So, I just wanna take them through slowly, get them strong, and then put them out there, just so that I make sure everything survives. All right, guys, I hope you found that interesting and helpful. And, just with all this propagation stuff, it takes practice. I'm not thinking about this as a money-making thing or something like that. It's just for me to get better at this. Every year, I practice my propagation skills to get better and better, because someday, when I've got multiple acres, I want to be able to create trees and herbs and all of these things for free and control the genetics that I want, the varieties that I want, and then even more importantly, I can teach other people how to do it with the best possible techniques and all of that. So yeah, guys, I've been propagating for a couple years. I'm getting better at it, but there's a million things to learn about this skill as well as all the other farming skills. So yeah, just trying to improve little by little each year.